Hi everyone, today we're going over Australian skilled migration. So we're going to give you an overview of the different ways you can do that. We have two categories, main categories. There's the independent skilled visa and there is a sponsored skilled visa. There is also other types of visas, but we won't be covering those, just these two main categories. Now, to first qualify, the two main things that you need is you need an occupation that is in demand, and you also need good English. Without these two key things, it will be really difficult for you to get a skilled visa. Okay, so what are occupations in demand? Well, there's a list that the Australian Immigration Department have published, and we can have a look at that in a little bit more detail. And about the English, well, generally you have to take a test, and we would recommend that you take an IELTS or TOEFL, but you'll need to have at least some sort of a score to actually begin to think about having a skilled visa. So of those two categories, we're going to start off the independent skilled visa. Now, these visas allow you to work in Australia and come over and work for any company that you would like. You're pretty much allowed to work in any category. But your occupation needs to be on what they call the sole list. And you also need to have what we call the 3 E's. So you need to have a good level of English. You really need to have a good level of experience, and you need the education that fits in with the occupation that you have. So we're going to put in some more information in regards to the sole list, but what you can do is you can apply offshore. In fact, 66% of these visas, or the visa applicants, are offshore when they make this. Notice that these applicants are generally very highly skilled, and they have been in their occupation for a number of years. They also have high levels of English. So if this applies to you, then I would start thinking about an independent skilled visa. It can be a long process, okay? It's not something that can get done overnight or within a few months. This is probably 6 to 2 years it can take. And of course, there are no guarantees. So generally at the moment in January 2016, you need around about an IELTS of 7. You need to be qualified, and you also need to have your experience. But it all focuses on that sole list. So if your occupation is on that sole list and it sounds like these things apply to you, then you can have a very good opportunity to apply for an independent visa. Now, the process of an independent visa, there are two main things that you really need to be aware of. And the first one is what they call an assessment. Now, an assessment is really matching your qualifications to the qualifications here in Australia. And the second one is a process called skill select. So these two main items are really essential to getting an independent skilled visa. The assessment really is about your qualifications and matching them to Australian qualifications. It tries to make sure that you have the same training as what is required here in Australia and the same industry standards, English and those sorts of things. Just remember there are requirements to pass an assessment, and you will need to go to an industry body to get this. It is not done through the government. Now, if we have a look over the assessment, and we've done that, we need to have a look at skill select. And skill select is a point system. And what happens is you get allocated points depending on your age, depending on your experience, and depending on your English. So if you've got enough points, you need 60 points to qualify for skill select. And you can get more points, especially if you've got more experience and better English. And it makes it a lot easier for you to get an independent skilled visa the more points you have. We'll put some links in of skill select so that you can determine your points. After you've done all of that, hopefully you get nominated for a visa. So it can take a while, and it suits offshore people because it can take this long time. So going on to, we've done the independent, suiting offshore. and we're going on to sponsored skilled visas. Okay, sponsored skilled visas are for individuals that have found someone that or a business that wants to sponsor them. Okay, now generally you'll find that 85% of these visas are done within Australia, and they do require a business sponsor that needs to contract you or provide you with an employment contract for at least 2 years. There are different types of contracts that are applicable, but generally it's a 2-year period. Now, the benefit with these sponsored skilled visas is that there are more occupations available, which means that your employer has more options to sponsor you. And also with the sponsored skilled visas, there are less requirements. So the English can be a little bit lower, and you don't need to have a high level of experience to get through things like the assessment or the skill select. However, you need to make sure that you work for your employer during that contract period. So this is really split up, and to go forward with a sponsored skilled visa, you need to be able to find a sponsor. So if you've found a sponsor, that's fantastic. And the thing is that the occupations can be on the SOL list, which is that list of in-demand occupations, but there's another list called the CSOL, and that's for occupations that are lesser in demand but bring people on a visa because they are still occupations that are in demand. So it's about getting skilled people into Australia. Now the process is a 3-step process in general. It can change, but this is just an overview, of course. Now, first of all, your business or the business that's sponsoring you needs to be registered, and then there's a nomination phase. The nomination phase is really offering the employment to Australians first, and then if there are no Australians available, then they will offer it over to a visa applicant. You need to make your application, and generally you will need a registered migration agent to help you and the business through this process. So lastly, what we have is just a summary. And really, to migrate into Australia on a skilled visa, you really need a good level of English, and you also need an occupation which is on either the SOL list and the CSOL. And your education needs to be tied to your occupation. So make sure the SOL and the CSOL, we'll put links in the description. Now we're making another couple of videos, more information about the independent skilled visas and more about the sponsored skilled visas. So please click on these if you want more information and more information about the process and how to go about it. Now, if you find that you haven't qualified for either of these, that's not a problem. If the English or you need a little bit more education, certainly you can do that over in Australia to improve both, and also possibly find an opportunity with a sponsor. So all is not lost. It's just a matter of finding the right opportunity for you. I hope this has been helpful to you, and please feel free to comment below. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks very much for listening. See ya.